Yes, so thank you for including me in this wonderful, wonderful conference. It's been really inspiring. I recently graduated from the Fashion Studies program at Parsons, and I wanted to share some reflections on the process and on the significance of packing a suitcase in the context of COVID-19. As we know, the uncertainties and insecurities, at times even the panic resulting from the closing of routes between countries, but also the shelter-in-place policies that happened so suddenly led many people around the world to pack up their belongings and relocate until further notice. And so as a result, the wardrobes of these people were impacted, among other things, many of which we heard about today, by the material practices involved in these movements and these relocations. And so to learn a little bit about these practices, a few months back, towards the end of March, which also coincided with the moment when I actually had to leave New York to go back to Germany and be closer to my family, I started collecting annotated suitcase photographs through called for submissions that I circulated via email and social media. And what I did was I asked people to essentially send me a photograph of their luggage and a note, a comment addressing a few of the items that were visible on the inside. And before, it's not working. Okay. I would like to share some of these images with you, but I actually wanted to start before that with a few considerations on the act of packing and the notion of packing, which actually draw on research I have conducted in connection with wardrobe practices in the context of residential mobility. And so packing is defined by the dictionary as the act of making to a compact bundle or putting into a protective container. But from a fashion studies perspective and with regards to our wardrobes, we may actually see packing as a process whereby people select clothes not only in combination with the space they have available, but with their plans and their destinations. And so packing actually involves forms of anticipation, forms of preoccupation regarding our practical and aesthetic needs. When we go on a trip, for example, we ask ourselves what will be useful, but we also ask ourselves what will be appropriate. And in this sense, packing is also really about something that Joanne and Wiss already observed with regards to getting dressed. It is about attending and observing norms and expectations and really preparing for a certain cultural and social setting. Of course, choosing what to carry goes hand in hand with choosing what to temporarily or permanently leave behind. And it is for this reason that packing may also be seen to sustain some kind of biographical interest, building on wardrobe research and memory studies. I know we have some true experts among us today. I would actually invite you to think about this moment where we select and sort out clothes in connection with a move or a trip as a way of preserving or parting from ideas, relationships, memories, aspirations that are embodied in these very garments. And as Jean-Sébastien Marco, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, material culture studies scholar observed, although more generally with regards to material objects in motion, bringing things with oneself is really to make the choice of remembering and vice versa. So against this background that I have briefly outlined, some of the questions that have been driving and inspiring my little suitcase inquiry are which factors came to matter in the process of packing, selecting, preparing, and sorting out for the unknown, and which sort of clothes did people choose to carry despite the uncertain length of their future stays and the uncertain nature of their destinations. I think it is also important to stress that, of course, unlike more common circumstances in Western societies, the people who choose to move and who pack their suitcases in this context, these mobilities were characterized by the impossibility of actually making predictions or attending to expectations. And so these are some of the images, some of the suitcases I've been collecting. On the one hand, I received a number of submissions from people who had to return to their country of citizenship to be closer to their families. Others came from people who packed to quarantine with their partners locally. And a few more were from people who were already traveling and were essentially stuck with their suitcases, forced to live out of their suitcases and not knowing when they would return to their homes and their wardrobes. On the top left, you see the backpack of a musician who decided to quarantine with some friends, and right next to that is, or rather are, the suitcases of a dear friend, a PhD student from the New School who returned to Germany, and you can see that in one of her suitcases she has books mostly, which is also to say that other objects, of course, came to matter in this process, not only clothes. But I wanted to zoom in on a few suitcases. This one belongs to a young woman who left Spain to return to Italy, where she grew up, and be closer to her mother right before the borders shut. And in her commentary, she writes, given the season and the temperatures, and that temperatures can vary significantly within 2 months, I had to pack a mix of winter and summer clothes that will allow me to layer and do the onion look. During the last years, I got used to having few things so that I could move and relocate easily. Accordingly, I ended up bringing a light jacket, a few t-shirts, along with 2 basic cardigans that go with everything I have, 3 pairs of jeans, and an overall that works in all seasons. And so here I thought it was quite interesting that this uncertainty over and this impossibility of making prediction with regards to her sartorial needs was resolved by carrying items that would serve her regardless of the seasonal, but also the locational variables she thought she was going to face. A different example comes from a young woman who was based in New York when she decided, when the lockdown happened, and she decided she was going to pack and join her family in Chicago. And in this case, the emphasis in her writing is rather on the objects or the clothes that embody meaningful relationships in her life. She speaks of a sweater that she borrowed from her mom. She writes, the oversized sweatshirt is ever so cozy, so I decided to borrow it permanently. And till this day, she jokingly asks when she'll have it back. She also comments on a pearl ring, which has been in her generation in her family for many generations, and writes, I received the ring on my 18th birthday and have worn and carried it with me everywhere I go. Someday I hope to pass the ring down to my own daughter. And again, the crux over having to select a few items and having limited space was sort of resolved by packing items that had some kind of sentimental value rather than a functional one, unlike the case we saw earlier. This suitcase, these images were submitted by a woman who found herself in Los Angeles when Trump announced that he was going to close the routes from Europe. And being herself Italian, having a partner who lived in Germany, she decided to reach him and arrived with a suitcase that was obviously filled with objects that were actually meant for her time in Los Angeles. She speaks of this suitcase as luggage of counterfactuals, and she addresses a few items. She writes, there was just one wool sweater in my luggage, just in case. Here I have to wear it every day. It's become my second skin. And continues to speak of a swimming suit. She says, it fits, it's small, and it stands for a useful reminder that there was a life before and that there will be another one afterwards. Jena is not everything. It's not everywhere. I haven't always been here. 1 month ago, I was taking a surfing lesson. And so here I thought it was quite interesting that by framing the swimming suit, as a reminder, she is bringing attention to the role of unworn clothes, of clothes that were in her suitcase but went unworn when she arrived in Germany. And it appears as though this swimming suit acquired some kind of grounding strength and provided her with a sense of continuity among the variables of time and place and the uncertainty she experienced. This last example is also from a very dear friend, a dancer who is normally based in Bern in Switzerland, and who was on tour in Berlin when when the lockdown was about to happen in Germany. And so instead of returning to Bern, she decided to reach her partner in Kassel and quarantine with him. These are the things she had packed for what she thought was going to be a 1-week tour, and ended up being a few months of quarantining in Kassel. And in her commentary, the emphasis or the stress is on a small collection of colorful, sparkly socks, on those objects that revealed themselves to be the most important during this time. And she writes of the socks she had luckily packed. I'm at home most of my days, training, dancing, stretching. So I'm really happy I brought them, just to feel like I'm wearing something nice every day. And so her socks, I think, are maybe an indication of something that has come up many times today in the course of the conference, which is this kind of connection or with one's habitual style, with one's style pre-quarantine. And so having mostly packed training clothes, in her case, the socks perhaps stand for her look and her style beyond the stage and beyond the hours of training, and therefore with her normal life. So this was my last example. Of course, these are just a few fractions of what I've been learning, and my research on suitcases, suitcase practices and contents is really in its early stages. So I'd be very happy to hear your thoughts. And for those of you who maybe are still stranded somewhere, living out of a suitcase, or have yet to return to their homes, I'd be very happy to receive your submissions, of course. However, I hope that these examples were able to pinpoint how the act of packing is a very interesting, I think, instance in the lives of our wardrobes, and also one that I believe has much to reveal about our relationship with clothes in moments of transition, relocation, and dislocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelie, for this interesting, perspective from out the suitcase. And do we have any comments or questions? I wonder if we have anyone in the audience or among the participants who had to pack and travel. I have a quick question. I probably missed it at the beginning of your presentation. Do you have a sort of, I don't know, project which is on any platform, or it's just personal communication? You ask your friends, your colleagues to send you submissions?
It was intended as, it started out as what was supposed to be a shared archive, and I was gonna create a blog, but this is still under construction. It did circulate among friends, of course, and people I knew, but it was also circulated through some platforms at Parsons. So some of the submissions were actually from people I didn't know. And yes, I hope I had received some more actually, but yes.
Yeah, you can actually kind of create typology of suitcases, because this one, yes, is like what you pack when you don't really understand how long you are going to stay away. And yes, some other suitcases which we pack for some, more precise reasons, and how the things are differ. The content is different. How many do you have? How many submissions do you have at this point?
I have about 30.
Okay, 30. A question from Heike. Thank you. Snapshot of the moment. Are you following up to ask how your participants now deal with what they packed?
Yes, I meant to, and with a few people, I've been discussing this actually also on a personal level because this has been a topic also in my life. So it has definitely been also just a subject of small talk with so many people around me. And yes, I would very much like to do that actually.
Mm, yeah, because it's interesting how many of them regret they haven't taken something or regret they have taken something. Okay, right. Any questions or comments?